Good afternoon, everyone. We are about to get started. Give us another minute. When the numbers start to slow down, we will get started. All right, good afternoon, everyone, and happy Women's History Month. I am Nellie Vasquez, Business Development Manager for Turner New York, and I'd like to welcome you to our ninth roundtable discussion. For this session, we've teamed up with Turner's ERG group, Make Your Mark. Make Your Mark is our ERG that focuses on women, and this year we are turning 10 years old. Today, we're focusing on the lady bosses of our industry. We want to talk about their come up, how much their world has changed, their struggles, and how they continue to persevere. Before I get to the panelists, let's go through the format. As always, we'll have a 25-minute discussion. We're going to do 5 minutes of rapid fire questions, and then we'll do 20 minutes of moderated Q&A. During the discussion, please feel free to submit questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We'll monitor it, and we'll run through as many as we can. So without further ado, we have at our table today, Nicole Holland-Dennis, President and Founder of Aris Design Studios, Shalivia Batiste, CEO of Leland Batiste, Susan Hayes, CEO of Susan Hayes Enterprises, and last but not least, Hillary Hulteen, CEO of Lafayette Metal and Glass. Before we go into our themes, ladies, would you mind just sharing a little bit about your respective companies? And I'll reach out to you as I see you on the screen. So Hillary, if you wouldn't mind going first.
Sure. I'm Hillary Hulteen, and I'm honored to be here today. I think it's a great panel series. A little bit about Lafayette. We specialize in architectural metal and glass, interior and exterior projects throughout Manhattan and the tri-state area. I've owned the company since 2011, and our company is founded on diversity and culture.
Thanks, Hillary. Shalivia, do you mind going next?
Sure. So my name is Shalivia Baptiste. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Leland Baptiste and Baptiste Engineering. We provide construction management and civil engineering services. We specialize in managing a project from design to closeout, and our clients are owners of infrastructure and buildings.
Thanks, Shalivia. Nicole, tell us a little bit about Aris Design Studios. Just go off mute. Just go off mute, Nicole.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Nellie. And so happy to be here on this panel. I'm Nicole Holland-Dennis, President of Aris Design Studios. I was going to try to do this without my glasses on, but I feel so less present because I can't see anything. Yes, and we are a design firm in Manhattan. We do work throughout the 5 boroughs. In the Caribbean. Recently, we've completed La Marquetta Plaza in Harlem. We're on the design team for the Columbia Business School with DSR and FX Collaborative. Our claim to fame, one of our most famous projects is the African Burial Ground National Monument, downtown Manhattan. We are currently engaged with some work for JFK at Terminal 1, and recently completing an office renovation, 50,000 square feet for NASA. And very happy to be here.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. Susan, tell us a little bit about Susan Hayes Enterprises.
Sure. Thank you for inviting me. My company is focused on strategic planning, succession planning, and technology solutions primarily for contractors in our space. And I have the privilege of working with some of the absolute best in class contractors, primarily in New York City, on what future trends can be anticipated and how to determine that information from the most reliable set of data sources. So it's a lot of fun, and I get to see upfront businesses operating in the most competitive environment with the best leadership in the world, in my opinion.
Thank you. Great. So we'll get into our topics. And as you all know, we kind of just have 4 or 5 themes, very high level, that we'd like to hear stories and just about your experiences. So the first I want to start with is where I feel we learn from our successes, but where I feel we personally learn the most is from our missteps. So can you take us through, and I'll open this up to whomever wants to share a story about missteps that they've had in their careers or lives?
So I would start by saying that if I thought that I was going to be here 30 years ago talking about the topic of advancing women in the construction industry with the same intensity, I would have been surprised. I think that a misstep in my career was not focusing enough on pipeline for feeding and encouraging women to be in our industry. And I hope that I'm so encouraged when I see the panelists who are here today. I hope that we can all continue to advance women being entrepreneurs, women in the trades, women in blue and white collar jobs in our industry. So it's a big responsibility, but the culture doesn't change unless we change it. So hopefully we can make some more near-term advances.
Definitely. So Susan, when you say you're surprised, do you think because yourself 30 years ago thought like this wouldn't have been a conversation still? Is that why you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I agree. Any other lady want to care to contribute?
Well, yeah, I'll take a stab. There's so many missteps that I can think about. And, which I'm actually grateful for. I call it the School of Hard Knocks. For architects in particular, they usually say that you don't really reach your point of, real practice until later in your years. So for us, I think maybe it's okay that we had a kind of rough start. As designers, I think we focused too much on the artistry because we really started as a very design-focused firm, and brought a lot of the kind of poetic and spiritual and really art-focused part of the profession to our company. And for a long time, there was not enough focus on accounting and business. And also as artists, on my side anyway, you tend to shy away from like selling your art because in a way you're, kind of cheapening the art, So as early designers and getting started, that was something I think that we could have used a little coaching on, and especially the accounting and the business end.
Definitely. So Hillary or Shalivia, do either one of you want to take one on?
Sure. I think missteps are learning opportunities. Like, we're not perfect, no one is. But I think it's important when you do realize that you make a mistake to own it. Don't go into the blame game like, oh, it was the architect, it was the engineer, it was the contractor. Own it, learn from the experience, and then grow from it. I think that's the important thing of a misstep. To learn what you didn't learn, fix it, own it, and move forward.
So with that, I'll move on to the next one. So I'm sure you all have felt this, but what being the token, whether it be in your respective fields, in the overall industry, what are your thoughts on that?
I'll start. I thought a lot about this. I've been in the industry. In a few years, it'll be 30 years. And, from day one, when I started, I didn't think race, gender was relevant. I always thought our ability to lead and perform and support the objectives was what was important. For me, it's been more about resetting an imbalance in the world with both gender, masculine versus feminine, and embracing diversity. I think my mindset's more that we are all tokens, that change is made not just by one person or by one act. So, I've always taken a stance of not faulting other people for their viewpoints and not trying to change their opinion. Stand back and learn to be the observer and empower self-awareness and trust yourself in what you believe and not compromising your ethics or your values, and tap into any support resources available to you upon your journey.
Sure. Nicole, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I want to echo on what Hillary just said about, your support network along your journey. For the young women out there who are planning a professional career, it's really important, and I really didn't understand it. Actually, things fell in line for me. I was kind of lucky, but you really have to plan out the details. If you're someone like in my case, I wanted it all. I wanted the profession, I wanted the family, I wanted the loving husband, the whole everything, So, you really have to plan it all out, you have to plan your social calendar so that you have time to be out and meet people. You have to plan when you're planning your family, in a sense, I guess my diverse background kind of came in handy. I guess my family really believes in, the extended family. And so my mom was around as a grandmother to really help with, my young children and babysitting. And, so these are things that are support systems that you really have to think about in advance. And I remember it was Kathy Hochul at I forget her position, but she's with the government secretary. Sorry, Kathy, I forgot your title. But at one of the lectures through the Women Builders Council, WBC, she said very specifically that our colleagues, our male colleagues, have to get used to the idea that, if we are really going to be, women are going to be really 50% of the workforce, well then, men at home have to be ready to do 50% of the work. And so I know in my case, my husband, if you ask him, he'll say that he did 50%. He probably felt like he did about like 20% of the diaper changes and all of that, But all this to say, whatever you plan, for me, family was a big part. Might not be for everyone, but whatever it is that you plan for your professional life, you have to make sure that your personal life is well planned and supporting your goals.
Susan, do you want to add to that? Just take yourself off mute.
So I think just to add on to what Nicole said, it's the people who are your support system. I've told this story 1,000 times, and for those of you who've heard it before, I apologize in advance. But the first time I went onto a job site 30 plus years ago, I admit to 30, actually a little more. It was a Montefiore job site in the Bronx. Turner was the contractor, and Pat DiFilippo was the super. And I was a Bronx girl, bold as could be. I knocked on the door of his trailer and had questions about tickets and invoices for the demolition contractor that I worked for at the time. And I was not keyed in enough to realize that I was a token, and I was not treated as a token. And I think that being able to have the confidence, and I would tell you a career-long admiration and relationship with Turner, because it was a safe place to be. It was a safe place to be a subcontractor. It was a safe place to be a colleague, or and you know, I think that there are a number of companies like that in our industry. But when you find these people, you know, to Nicole's point, you need to build your support system and your network, because no one's sitting around saying, gee, how can I advance, you know, this person's career? You know, when you walk into their trailer in 1985 or 86, you're a person, you're valid, you're competent, you are here to do business. And when you meet people in this great city who recognize that, you need to build on them. And so I think that keep your LinkedIn up to date, keep your social calendar, your responsibilities, attend events like this, make sure that you get the guidance on accounting and strategic planning and all of those things that were discussed. And people are out there willing to do that, but you have to advocate for it.
Sure. No. And just if I'm just curious, you mentioned like when you find those safe companies, and thank you for identifying Turner as one of them. It just kind of got me thinking, how do we create more of those safe companies?
So I think that's a little bit of why after 30 years I'm still doing these things, because I think it's really the responsibility of all of us to, you know, when you look at something like what happened with COVID, you have so many women, and not just women, but so many women who had to become teachers, and they were abandoned. School is on, it's off. We're you know, Zoom teaching. We're working. It's not viable to expect that that this is going to happen in a job like ours that requires you are present. And it's great to hear about how the technology industries have accommodated people, but that's not who we are or what we do. So we have to figure it out. And when you have companies that acknowledge and understand, this is a real issue for us. We could lose capable women in the workforce because of this. How can we accommodate this? What can we do? And so when I see companies who have been in tune to this type of issue, and some of them are big and established, and some of them are not quite as, have quite as much presence, but they recognize, to the points that were made earlier, if we're going to be 50% of the workforce, then we have to have a plan for how to manage the work-life balance. And employers need to do that. And so I think that when there are discussions around that and people share ideas and share challenges and share solutions, that's how you make more companies like a Turner.
I think it's also important for employees to raise their hand and say, this is what I need. This is what I'm going through. Like, I could think back to when I was previously at a private engineering firm and I had my first baby, and they were very accommodating to my needs. Like, it came to the point where sometimes I said, okay, I need an office so I can do pumping. And they created that. So sometimes to help companies get to the place where they need to be, to the place that Susan just described, you have to say it. I need help. This is what I need. How can we work together to get to this? Because when that door is open for you, it opens the door for the other woman behind you and the young girls coming up looking at you.
You know, I just want to chime in. I really agree with that. I will say, through COVID, we did all of our performance reviews remote. And one of the things I actually, snagged the idea from a colleague of mine, we started asking employees very pointed questions about what they needed to support their life, what they needed to support their families. And we found that there was a lot of similarities. amongst the women, but also with the men, as far as remote work, home, availability, less hours. Some people wanted a role reduction as a result of going through COVID. So I think, employees definitely, I agree with you 100% that they have to ask, they have to put themselves out there and tell you what they need. But I think as employers, we also have to ask, because I think sometimes people are afraid. People make a lot of fear-based decisions. And they think that we might not hear them or we might not accommodate them. And I think that they need to know that we will.
Yeah, definitely. I think, that part is for sure. I think a lot of people are often, to your point, Hillary, are afraid to ask, right? They don't realize, like, you can build it up into your head to being this monumental thing. And then, your manager's like, yeah, sure. And you're like, well, wait, what just happened? Right. But you have to create that environment for people to feel secure enough to speak up. And I think that's huge.
Well, it's about culture. I mean, most of us think we're automatically going to hear no, and we don't like hearing no, but no is not a bad word. Sometimes we need to use it more, but that's the worst thing that could happen is no. Sometimes we have to get out of our own heads and we have to put ourselves out there and allow ourselves to be vulnerable, because then that presents opportunity.
Absolutely. So that goes to the next, and we've kind of started talking about this already, but sacrifices. So we all make them every day. I'm just curious what you think when you hear that word and what comes to mind. Nicole, we can start with you.
Yeah, sure. So sacrifices. Yeah, so for me, and I'd had the time to think about this a little bit. When I think of things that I had to sacrifice, right? So again, I think the only architect on the panel, yeah. And so what that means in my career is maybe some competitions, or the extra things that maybe other firms may have been able to do over the past 20 years. Some projects that maybe, we did schematic studies for, and because I had a little bit less time as I was starting my family, I had to let those opportunities go, really. There were some competitions we just couldn't get to, there's some projects we just couldn't follow up on. And what I really see is where my time went, and I don't really see it as like a life sacrifice. I see it as a temporary sacrifice that I had to make at certain points of my career for what was important to me, which was, my family. And I look at my girls now and I think, yeah, it was worth missing 5 competitions or whatever it is that I missed. It was absolutely worth it, so but they're important competitions, and I mean important sacrifices, because in the end they actually add up and accumulate the more volume, right, and cash flow and more successful projects. And so it's something that I would have to have not made that, choice. I would have liked to have been able to do more, so but yeah, so those are some of the sacrifices that I think about.
Hillary, I see you're unmuted, so I'm going to jump to you.
Yeah. So I think my experience, I kind of went way back on this. It was very different in construction almost 30 years ago. We worked a lot. I think we still work a lot. But from the beginning, I am the definition of workaholic. So work to me was like oxygen. Actually, I love the industry. The passion, the drive in the industry was just all consuming to me. A couple of years ago, because I've always worked a lot, a couple of years ago, I was having dinner with some friends, and there was a new acquaintance there, and they asked me like what my hobbies were. And one of my girlfriends answered, work, and everyone laughed. One, she's funny, but it was true. That was my hobby. So I had to sit back and think about, one thing is, why don't I have any hobbies? 2, what am I interested in? So I sat down and I'm a big fan of mind mapping, just to brainstorm my ideas. And I sat down and I wrote all the things I liked about work. I like to learn, I like to teach, I like to read, I like brain teasers, I love math problems, hence I love financials. And I like to innovate, I like to create, I like to grow. I like to grow things. But I also like to be entertained and I like to entertain. So I'm a big fan of performance coaching, and it's helped me throughout my career immensely because early on support systems weren't really available like they are now. So we worked and started plotting out a plan that I was going to make time every single week to pursue the interests, the things that I loved about work, but in other things. And one of the biggest commitments I had to make was to honor myself, to give myself that time. And it was a real struggle. You know, I have a pretty jam-packed calendar. Finding time just to see my kids, my friends, return a phone call was quite difficult. But I was steadfast and I made the commitment. And as a result, I have a very long list of hobbies now. But more importantly is I made a lot of time for myself. And when I made that time for myself, I grew and I was inspired by so many other interests that actually did help my performance and work and overall help my team. So, and finding a small amount of time, I was able to do so much for myself and for others as a result of it. So I really do encourage people to do that, because we often, especially as women with our other responsibilities, we don't make time for ourselves. And we need to. It's important.
Absolutely. Moving on to the topic of surviving. Susan, do you want to take a crack at that?
So a little bit like what Hillary described, I think that in order to, I happen to be extraordinarily curious. I'm an insatiable reader. I read everything. I love learning. I like people. You know, I was on a conference call yesterday with 7 executives, and somebody said, I hate daylight savings time. And I said, I love daylight saving time. And he said, I hate the change. I said, I love the change. And so that's kind of, this industry has so much opportunity to learn every day. The industry is complex. It has every facet of what you could possibly want in it as an entrepreneur in a business. And so I think the key is you have to stay sharp. You have to be willing to, you know, stay with every topic and understand how it affects the business. And so I've always think that I have an advantage in the survival mode, because in my head, you know, as I go to the supermarket, whenever I know what the outcome is going to be, because I calculated in my head. I know what this costs, and that's sort of how I get through my day. I connect the numbers to whatever it is that I'm doing. And so to me, this is why I'm so passionate about this industry for women, because it's a great industry. And it's I think that you can do more than survive here. You can thrive. But and there's so many things about, you know, if you look at sort of the textbook discussions about female leaders and women CEOs, and it has all of the makings of what, you know, women are purported to be good at. And so I think the most important thing is critical mass. When you see the WBE requirements demand outpacing the supply, it means it's hard. It's hard to do. And so, but it's sort of like someone needs to show you the way. It's a vocabulary. It's a how to apply your skill set to this industry. And so, you know, I have to give a shout out, if I can, to like the Salvadori Center, a not-for-profit that helps to connect the built environment to primary age school children who understand how bridges are built and buildings and why it matters to them and how to work in project-based learning environments. And, 30 years ago, if you told me that I had to worry about, fourth graders being connected to our industry, I would have said no. But now I have plenty of people who were in the fourth grade 30 years ago who work for me or work with me. And so I think it's so important to invest in the pipeline. There need to be more of us. We don't need to be tokens. We can not only survive, but thrive.
Absolutely. Shalivia, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, for me, survival means continuing to learn every day. And adding to what Susan said, that's the only way that you're going to grow, and learning to pivot. Like, that was one thing that this pandemic definitely taught us. If you had told us even years ago, even last year, that we would be working from home, the majority of us, the answer would have been, of course not. There's no way. It can't be done. And look at us. We were shut down and we immediately figured out technology from kindergarten all the way up. We figured it out. So I think it's important to continue to learn, continue to teach, and to know when to pivot and move in that direction.
Perfect. So now to kind of lighten this up a little bit, let's talk about winning. Hillary, I'll start with you.
Oh, I think winning's the most important part. I think missteps are important too, but they really lead to winning. We're a critical path contractor. If we're doing exterior, sometimes we're first in the door, but typically we are the last people in. So we hold a lot of deadlines. So our team hears the bad a lot, usually. So we changed the format, which I think is a huge win for us. As part of kind of our culture is to celebrate one another, but every single one of our meetings internally starts with one thing: wins and insights. We start the meeting that way because the rest of the meeting might be a little rough, talking about projects and deadlines and vendor issues and supply demand, and internal issues with, performance based, et cetera. But if we start off with winning, it sets the format of collaboration and working together. I also think the biggest thing with us is that we can't be fear-based thinkers. That leads to winning every day because it doesn't cloud our mind, it doesn't block our innovation or our creativity. So we have to be goal-oriented, but we have to think with clarity, and being present really helps us do that. I also think as a leader, and this is probably the most difficult lesson I had to learn, is because I've been so hands-on most of my life, is the moment you hit a management or C-suite position, you need to start planning for your successors immediately. You do not have to have all the answers. You have to hire the people that do. And so I think any company or any person in their career, the moment you hit the level, the next level, start planning for the next level and start building your team. And I think for me, that is an everyday win.
Perfect. Great. Nicole, do you want to tell us your win story?
Yeah, definitely. So I love winning. Very, very competitive. I've always been very competitive. I ran track, I played tennis, and even in my family, when we play family game boards, I play to win. I don't, I take no prisoners. So yeah, winning is a great fuel for us as designers. When we win competitions, our team goes crazy, but winning is also just surviving is winning. I think all of us here on this panel, just getting to this panel is winning, for all the young women in our audience and dads too, you have your children with you. It would be great for them to see this panel of women, the young girls and the young boys, to see us as survivors, as as winners. I think if you have survived this far in business, like we've been in business for 25 years, that in itself is a form of winning. So.
Absolutely. Susan, what's your win?
So I think my win is when I hear from somebody who worked for me 20 years ago who went off to do great things and still reach out to me when they hit whatever issue they could use some guidance or counseling on. I feel like I have a number of very, very highly successful professionals who have worked for me over the years, and investing, as Hillary described, in leaders, in tomorrow's leaders, taking somebody who has the stuff and helping them to walk through the how to connect the dots in our industry to be successful. And I'm most proud of having so many people that I've had the privilege of working with over the years who've become successful and have created opportunities for others. It's a big little city. And that to me is part of winning. I am very competitive, but winning is about a team and about taking a business to a new place. It's not so much what I do, but what can we do? Because there's if you have your own wins, you can run a candy store. If you have multiple people rowing all in the same direction, then you can have a string of candy stores or a string of projects. And so that's the biggest win for me. And all things being equal, it's even nicer when there are women who are winning.
Very well said. Shalivia.
I think that, of course, winning is great, but for me, it feels even better after like a great defeat or a moment of sacrifice. And even sometimes I see it in my son, like he's very competitive. He obviously gets it from me and he always wants to win. And he gets down when he doesn't win. And I try to explain to him that you're not always going to win. But even in the times when you don't win, there's something for you to learn to help you the next time around. So for me, even in business, and sometimes when there are maybe projects or proposals that we don't win, we keep going after it. And then that time when we do win, it's just like, yes, this was worth the sacrifice. This was worth the late nights. This was worth working late in the office. So all the trials, all the difficulties kind of sum up and equal to a win. So I appreciate that. So winning is sacrifice to me, and winning is also recognizing defeat and using that to propel me into the win.
Sure. So with that, we are going to go into our rapid fire questions. So Anna Aritanovska from our Make Your Mark ERG group, she is one of the co-leaders, is actually going to take us through the rapid fire, and then she will go through the Q&A as well. So Anna, take it away.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for those inspiring words thus far. Like Nelly mentioned, my name is Anna Ritanovska. I'm currently a procurement agent with Turner and a co-lead for the Women's Employee Resource Group. So starting off with the rapid fire questions, if you can answer with about 3 to 4 words. So the first one, to keep it light, tell me about a pet peeve. And I'll start with Nicole.
Pet peeve. Oh, wasn't ready for that. Let's see. Pet peeve is not my kids leaving the dinner table without taking their dirty plates with them.
I'll move on to Shalivia.
Lazy people.
Susan.
Can't versus won't.
And Hillary.
I have to agree with Susan, can't versus won't.
Let's move on to a crown achievement. So it doesn't have to be work, it could be personal. I'll start this time with Susan.
New York City Marathon.
Shalivia,
Priming our first project.
Nicole,
That would be the African Burial Ground National Monument.
and Hillary.
I think we celebrated our 10-year anniversary, and 80% of the people that we hired within that year are still with us today.
And the last rapid fire. So this is your personal mantra. So I'll start this one off with Shalivia.
So much. You stumped me. Anything is possible if you are committed to trying.
Hillary,
I have a bunch. When you think you're stuck, tie a knot and hang on.
Nicole,
You matter. Everyone matters. Never give up. Everyone matters. You matter.
and Susan.
Unless you're the lead dog, the view never changes.
A good
Thank
one.
you so much. I think I caught you guys off guard with a couple of those, but thank you so much. So we'll jump into the Q&A. So none of these are directed at any of you in particular. So if you like any of these questions, please let me know and jump in. So the first question that we have is, what are 2 takeaways that you would give your younger staff or your younger self?
Advocate for yourself. Say what you need. And if it's a matter of sitting down with your team lead or your boss, sit down and plan out a career path. This is where I want to go. Can you show me what steps I need to take to get there?
Do you have any specific example?
For me, when I started out, well, even before I got into the industry, I want to say I was actually on the fence of becoming an architect. And in high school, I attended a summer program, and one of the professors recommended that I do civil engineering as an undergraduate and then go back to pursue my master's in architecture. I ended up doing both in civil engineering, but just being able to know what I wanted to do and voicing that to someone who understood the industry and being able to get feedback, that helped guide my entire career.
Does anybody have any other thoughts?
I do. I think it's important to, to separate the personal and the professional, is that sometimes negative things happen, sometimes bad things happen, sometimes we make mistakes. But regardless of what happens in your career, don't let it define you as an individual. Don't assess your worth based on one situation. I think people need to give themselves a little bit more credit and use your natural abilities. A lot of times I'll ask people, I'll ask them what they think, and then they'll tell me what they think. And I said, now tell me what you feel. Go with your gut. It's usually the best answer.
I'd like to add to this one, to always young and, mid-career, when you get stuck, pull your head out of the sand, take a fresh look around, see what everyone else is doing, see who else is in the business with you, who's in the same situation you are, take a look around. Like I didn't know of Baptiste Engineering. I had no idea you guys existed. The rest of these great professionals on the panel, it's really refreshing to be able to stop and take a look around and see what everyone else is doing. Sometimes you get stuck and your head is in the sand. pull your head out of the sand and take a fresh look around.
And to kind of piggyback on this question, is there anything that you've learned about how to be a leader or when you moved into that leadership position? An example, it could be positive or negative, that it really shaped you to the leader that you are now.
I actually have a good one for this. Culture was very different a long time ago, as I was saying before. And I had it in my mind the first 10 years of my career, I had to be pretty tough. And I was part of a very strong culture-based company. I was their first female executive. It was, like I said, 10 years into my career. And we were doing a strategic planning session. And I was really struggling. It was the first job I've ever had that I ever struggled at. And I wasn't reaching the wins. It wasn't reaching the goals. And the strategic coach, as well as the board of directors that were hosting the event, we had a private sit down. And I really struggled with culture. I didn't get it. I was all about performance and productivity and profit. I didn't value it as much as I valued people. And I think that had a lot to do with me being really tough in the industry, me not willing to be vulnerable, me not paying attention to, emotional needs of others, inclusive of myself. So we devised a plan. I became a consultant for the company. I was leading a change management initiative, but I also realigned myself. And I went back to the drawing board and worked on my leadership style and spent a lot of time working with emotional intelligence. And I do think that, it was a tough meeting that day, but it definitely led me to where I am today. So I do think leadership style, emotional intelligence, and self-awareness are critical to developing great cultures and businesses.
Very well said.
So I would add to what Hillary said, really two things, actually 3 points. The first is find a mentor. If you have a mentor that you trust, that you can say the absolute worst thing to and be as stupid as you feel when you're in the worst mindset, you need that. Everybody does. And so I've been very fortunate in my career in having mentors. And I would, no matter what else you do, get a mentor. The other thing I would say is that a leader swings at the ball. No decision sends a message. Make the call. Do the best you can with what you know at the time. And it's important to have the confidence in knowing that you don't know it all, and that's okay, but you're going to make the decision for what's best for you. And the last thing is just on the points of, again, building on what Hillary said, I'm a big Myers-Briggs person. I firmly believe in understanding how people come to the table and where their strengths are and where they might, environments where they might succeed more than others. And I find that is a very good practical tool for leaders and building your team. So there's no wrong answer. And by the way, it's like building an ark, you need everybody. And so if you can learn about Myers-Briggs, if you're up and coming and building a team, I would suggest it.
Thank you very much.
To Susan's point on identifying like strengths and weaknesses, I think as leaders, we tend to rely and identify our strengths. And there's nobody better than yourself to do what you do best, but it's also critically important to come to terms with your weaknesses, to really understand what they are. And you can do a couple of things. You can work on them, or you can hire around them. Find the talent that complements your leadership strengths and weaknesses.
Thank you. I have another question from the audience here. We were talking a little bit before about can't versus won't. So the worst that can happen when you ask some about something is they could say no. What would you do if the response was, well, everybody goes through this?
Probably if everyone goes through it, what steps or guidance can you give me to get me through it? If it's so common, what are some common solutions then? That would be my response.
Tell me about your personal experience. something like that.
Right. Yeah.
I think everybody isn't you. You know, I think that you have to drill it down to the individual.
Well, everyone gets through it. But do they? Does everyone get through it? You know, not necessarily, you know. So this is why, you know, you can't take people for granted if somebody's going through a very hard time. You know, not everyone gets through these hard times. Not every, you know, struggling business makes it through a financial disaster or COVID-19 or, you know, so every case is, you know, different and has to be taken for, you know, the detail of what it is, you know?
Great. Okay. Another question that we have here is, how do we increase the pipeline with women? So maybe some external organizations, internal organization, how do we increase women in the workforce?
Mentorship. I think one of the organizations that I was a part of and now that I do serve with is the ACE Mentor Program. I was a participant in high school and I definitely put that project on my resume. That's something I did. I was a part of it. And it prepared me for what the industry is like. And now it's a joy to serve these high school students and to teach them what the industry is about and what they can do. And if you like math and if you like science, and if you like to take things apart and put them together, there is room here for you. So I think mentorship is big. And it's not only at the high school level, from K through 12. It's important to tell like the elementary, the middle school students, break it down to their level so they can understand. Like, yeah, you stacking that cups is engineering. It's building a tower and then determining what force is going to knock it over. It's all that, and that's stuff they enjoy. Kids love to build things and like to break things. So it's just bringing it to their understanding and to their level.
I like to hire a lot of moms. I do. Sometimes it's hard to find them. And of course, there's a lot of rules or regulations about asking the questions. But I like to hire a lot of moms. They have great negotiation skills. They negotiate all day long. They're able to do a lot. They usually have, 5 or 6 hands, which is helpful. But I also, I think later in life too, there's a lot of career opportunities that we can really bring to the women, whether it's skilled tradespeople, that's something that we really struggle with. We have a great deal of women in our organization, but finding skilled tradespeople to work in the field and within the unions is very difficult. There's not a lot of them at all. So I think, especially after COVID and, people making a lot of changes in careers or losing jobs, I think it creates an opportunity for us to try to find those candidates. And like you said, maybe it is an internship or a mentorship program and taking somebody on and providing them an opportunity. I think we have to put our heads together to make that happen.
So I would say a little bit of a commercial here again. Salvadori, if you can support these organizations with, obviously all of these not-for-profits have really struggled. And what's more important than teaching project-based learning to an 8th grade or 4th grade girl in the Bronx about bridges? Because again, I won't be here. I hope I won't be here in 30 years having this same conversation, but I might be. And so many of you will be. And so we have to make that investment. Non-traditional employment for women, is a spectacular organization that helps to connect women with union jobs, not jobs, careers, and it's life-changing. And I think that we all have to lend our financial support, our professional support, our emotional support. And if we don't do it, it's not going to happen. It's a great deal better than it used to be, but we have a long way to go. And just to quote Madeleine Albright, "There's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women." So obviously none of us fall into that category, but in any case, just something to be mindful of.
So, Susan, I have the misfortune of going after that quote, but I think we all heard the message loud and clear, and I agree with you. I think, what we all do, it's very cool, and a lot of people don't know about it outside of perhaps Nicole's profession, right? Like, we have a lot of great people, and we have a very interesting, challenging work. So I agree with you. I think early exposure is key for us. So with that, I want to thank all the panelists for the insights today, as well as the attendees. At the end of this, there'll be a brief survey. Please take time to answer the questions, so we'll make this better for you. Check us out next month, March 31st. Not next month, next 2 weeks. We'll be talking about life sciences. We hope to see you again. Again, thanks, ladies, for all the insights, and we'll see you all soon. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Turner Construction.